the Utopian Community Series. Let's get things started. Look at the progress I'm making right now. I'm doing a growing square. Because, you know, if you do that, eventually, they're going to join together. Eventually. As a result. Because I'm trying to make sure there's enough expansion going on. So the crops can grow at the right pace. That's Metalizer by Judas Priest. To calculate the facts about tensor calculations is that the best way to calculate it is multiply the GPU shader clock times that by the number of tensor cores, multiply that by 144. 144. That'd be your answer. How was I able to do that? First thing I noticed, the NVIDIA Titan V had a tensor performance of 132,000 teraflop. No. 132... No. My mistake. 132 gigaflop. No. Teraflops of performance. When it goes to graphical performance of the graphics card. The tensor core performance is pretty important in artificial intelligence. Which means that slowly, artificial intelligence would reach the performance of the human brain. The fate of humanity as a result of technological singularity is unknown. It might end up destroying the Earth in the process called grey goo. Which is actually pretty scary. Robots that are supposed to help us will end up going against us. In a possible future. It is a possible future out there. Another possible future is it might actually end up helping us. when it goes to colonizing other planets, or helping us beat really hard games. And the RTX graphics cards will be released in September and October. September for the 2080 and the 2080 Ti, October for the 2070. The NVLink 2 is like the next generation of SLI. Scalable link interface, meaning that you'll have a lot better performance. Which means, on paper, SLI will get you double the graphical performance, but in the real world use, it'll get you a little less than double. Because there are other components that'll bottleneck that double performance for the graphics card. One of those bottlenecks is the CPU itself. And sometimes the bottleneck is the RAM. That is the temporary storage. The hard drive is a platter drive. It's a mechanical drive. One thing you need to know is that the Intel Core i9 9900K is actually up for pre-order, along with the i7-9700. They're up for pre-order. By the way, some website over there. But in my opinion, Pentium would be just as good for gaming if you're on the tight budget. In fact, if you're interested in going to PC gaming, start off with something like that. Then work your way up to an Intel Core i3, then i5, then an i7. Problem with the i7 is that is just a tad bit overkill. We really need 6 cores for right now. We'll focus on 6 cores sometime in the future. Because that is just a tad bit overkill. The death of Angry Grandpa is actually one of the reasons to ditch alcohol. Which is why it's best to ditch booze altogether. Ditch the booze altogether. Because alcohol can kill. A gun can only... if a gun goes into the wrong hands, it can get pretty dangerous. Oops. Especially with the extremists over in the Middle East and extremists all over the place. All over the world. Yes, this includes Christian extremists too. True Muslims are actually peaceful. they're not vicious. Like what Bin Laden is. Bin Laden was a pretty vicious person. He hated America. Bin Laden was anti-Semitic and anti-Christian. I value religious freedom. I value religious freedom, actually. Genghis Khan, when he took over a lot of Asia, he spared their religion, actually. He didn't forcibly convert people to another religion, because that would be terrible. Here's what helped shape religious freedom. Even though he was a pretty evil emperor, he did some good things too. The only good thing Hitler really did was go for the provide everybody with a car and animal rights. Those are the two only. But for the most part, he was really evil. He is pretty evil. He wanted to eliminate several ethnic groups from the face of the earth. The reason I'm not saying races is because there's only one race. It's called the human race. I believe that we have the right to mix ethnic groups together. It's actually a pretty good way to help fight racism. Mixing ethnic groups together is actually a good way to fight racism. It can also blend cultures together. Eventually, the white group, like the non-Hispanic, will end up becoming a minority in the future. Eventually, marriages will end up being a minority too. Eventually, a lot of the people who have kids, they never get... eventually, sometime in the future, they'll end up having kids without getting married. Which is sort of taboo in some cultures, but not so much in other cultures. Yelling the N-word is taboo pretty much everywhere. It's pretty much taboo everywhere you go. So don't utter that word. Because you might offend someone if you do. It's an extremely offensive name for black people. Cracker can be pretty offensive to white people. If you're gonna refer to cracker, refer to those baked goods. Like those graham crackers or saltines, stuff like that. Just like you shouldn't call black people the N-word, you shouldn't call white people cracker. Even though I myself am white. But if you're referring... I'm not trying to offend any of y'all. But racism's a pretty big problem in modern society. It's gotta stop. racism is a pretty big problem. It's not just black lives that matter, all lives matter. No matter what skin color you are, it doesn't even matter your ethnic group. It doesn't even matter what species you are. All lives do matter. Doesn't matter if you're gay or straight, or bisexual. All lives do matter. Which means equality for all. And eventually, because we're already at the beginning of the end of capitalism, with workers fighting their CEOs for a living wage. Workers fighting their CEOs for a living wage. And eventually, another thing we need to do is let inflation catch up with housing costs. Because they went up faster than inflation. Back in 2008 to 2012, there was something called hyperinflation, sort of. If we ended up going into a phase of hyperinflation where inflation rates in America started going to like 1,000,000% per week, because we've been printing all that money to put us out of debt. Millions, yes, even most of the top 1% will end up going broke pretty quickly. As if what happened in Germany during the interbellum period, where they had to pay a lot of war reparations. That took a huge hit on the economy. That took a huge hit on the economy. That's not good. In fact, it's terrible. Hitler was pretty evil. Most of us would hate him. I'd rather not have him as president, because he's such a jerk. He killed probably about 50 million people. Maybe more. The Holocaust was one of the worst tragedies there was. If I ended up over-exaggerating the Holocaust, I would. It's not a good idea to be taking pictures at the Holocaust cemetery in Germany, because it's basically taking pictures of dead prisoners. It's not good. Because that's desecration. The dead prisoners, that's just desecrating them. That's just desecration. one of the reasons why England's got such a low crime rate. How can we reduce gun ownership? Education. And learning how to use a gun properly. Like, people need to know how to use their guns properly. To prevent a suicide or mass shooting. It's not that we should take away our guns. It's that we need to educate people on how to use guns properly. Islamic extremism's pretty problematic in the Middle East. What's wrong with the Middle East? Especially in Iraq, Iran, Syria. Stuff like that. In a fascist country, North Korea is an example of modern-day fascism. North Korea is an example of that. Nazi Germany was definitely fascist. What we need is democracy. We shouldn't be voting on people based on wealth. We should vote for them based on their skills and abilities. We shouldn't vote on people just because they're wealthy. See, that's the problem. What we need more working classmen in Congress. If I was a congressman, I'd cut my salary down to like $50,000 a year. Because who needs to be getting paid $200,000 a year? Who needs to get paid that? See, that's the problem. Jeff Bezos gets paid a lot of money that he really doesn't need. While his workers bust his ass making almost nothing. This is why one reason to abolish capitalism. And bring America, and probably the world, into democratic socialism. Like, based on direct democracy. Which each voting district would have their own set of rules. In each voting district, they shouldn't fight each other over even the most simple of things. They shouldn't fight each other. They need to work together. The oligarchs, which are the wealthy 1%, are what's turning America, and probably the world, into something called a global totalitarian state. Something called a New World Order. The truth about the New World Order is it'll be an oligarchy. It wouldn't be an autocracy. It'll be an oligarchy. Similar to how Russia was post-Stalin, and China post-Mao Zedong. Like, it was ruled by... They were both ruled by civil junta. Something called a junta. Who worked for the General Secretary. What we need is equality for all. Which means we need to keep fighting for equality. The reason why most of the millennials are in debt, like after going to college, it's not just because they're entitled.
Curtis?
John?
What you talking about?
I was talking about our current situation of the world right now. John?
Can we say no politics?
I'm trying not to be too political, John.
Okay, also pause the recording.
I can't. Unless I pause the... I had a talk with my brother. Back to the game. Eventually, there is something we have is called freedom of speech. The problem with ag-gag laws that might end up getting set up will actually end up destroying our free speech. Capitalism ultimately will end up leading to war, and animal abuse, and poverty, and possibly famine. That'll cover almost the entire planet, to where only the rich will end up being the ones getting the food, while everybody else ends up suffering. This is just sad. This is the truth behind what we're headed for. In that New World Order, famines will strike around the world. Yes, even first world countries. Not just second and third world, but also first world. Another thing that's going to happen in that New World Order, there are other possible scenarios for the New World Order. There are other possible scenarios for the New World Order. Not just one, but it's one of many scenarios. They all end up in oligarchy, which means the rule of a handful of people, of a committee called a junta. Nazi Germany, millions got punished just because of their skin color. That's just not nice. We all deserve to be treated equally, no matter what. And in that New World Order, basically it'll be like a corporatist republic. Just like Italy under Mussolini, Germany under Hitler. Racism would get pretty extreme. Racism would be rampant. Probably into going against the New World Order. That New World Order. If it's in the far left, I'd go towards that far left. What we need to do is to help fight animal abuse, is to fight capitalism altogether. Because capitalism ultimately leads to animal abuse. Look at factory farms. Look at rodeos. It's not... they want you to believe that bulls are vicious animals. The truth is, they are peaceful. I agree with Gary Yourofsky on that one. Which is why that stunt from Jackass called the Toro Totter, the bulls tried to gore people. They're wearing a really tight waistband. They're wearing a tight waistband, which causes them to buck around violently, trying to get that off their waist. Imagine having to wear that waistband. You'd be bucking around like a bull, trying to get it off. Your best tip, don't go to a rodeo. Because it's just cruel. Animals deserve to be left alone from their abusers. For me, I'd rather have a chicken as a pet. I'd rather not use chicken as food. I'd rather have a chicken as a pet. I'd rather rescue it from a chicken from a factory farm, and have it as a pet. I'd take the chicken to a veterinarian. One thing we need to stop doing is breeding animals to grow so large so quickly. Because that is just painful. Imagine being bred to grow so large so quickly. You're not gonna like that. That is what's gonna happen if America stayed capitalist. The only way to stop the descent into oligarchy is democratic socialism. And Marxism. And anarchism. Combining all of that together. An example of a good communist was Nelson Mandela. People think of communism as evil, but some of them are good guys as well, like Nelson Mandela. He was the president of South Africa who fought for equality. He was a Marxist. My goal is to fight for equality everywhere in America and the world. I'm happy that women in Saudi Arabia will end up getting the right to drive soon. I'm happy about that. Pol Pot was like the Hitler of Southeast Asia. Because he killed a lot of city people. He killed a lot of them. With Lenin, he wasn't the one who caused the most evil. Stalin was the one who caused the most evil. Trotsky, on the other hand, wanted to promote democracy, while still retaining the aspects of socialism. That's all I have time for tonight. Thank you for watching. Share this with your friends to help my channel grow. Subscribe if you love this video. Like button if you like this video. Dislike button if you disliked it. Thank you for watching, and as always, peace out.